There you
Okay,
go.
thanks, Rashmi. All right, great. So just want to go over quickly some ground rules. So we're just asking everybody in plenary to stay on mute, but then we're going to have some breakout groups. And so please stay unmuted actually in the breakout groups so that we can have a dialogue. We ask everybody to leave their video on if they feel comfortable, and especially in the breakout groups. If you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat box. There's a raise your hand icon. If you go to the participants list on the bottom, if you hover over the bottom, there's a raise your hand option. There's also on your screen should be an option for clapping or thumbs up if you want to do that as a reaction. If you can't hear us, can't see what we're talking about, please tell us in the chat. We have people that are monitoring that, and we definitely don't want to be talking to ourselves on mute, so please let us know. And I do want to let everybody know we are recording today's session. All right, so with that, I am going to move on to the agenda. So you can see for the first half hour today, we're going to be talking about why are we doing this research, and then our partners here, Agribusiness Associates, are going to give an introduction to their work, food loss and waste, and then the specific goals of this project. And we're going to have 30 minutes to connect with each other and have some conversations about food loss and waste in our programs and breakout groups, and then come back together, talk about what our highlights, and then what our next steps are. All right, so with that, I'm gonna just kick off with a little bit of background about why are we doing this and why are these teams working together. So I wanna emphasize USAID and USDA have a long-term collaboration around issues relating to the intersection of agriculture and climate change. So we're gonna hear from Noel Gerwick later, who's in USAID's Office of Global Climate Change on the Sustainable Landscapes team, and the work that he's doing and why this is so important to them. From the USDA side, I'm representing our Resilient Agriculture team, and our programs really focus on three main goals: enhancing productivity and income of farmers and farm communities, building adaptive capacity, and reducing and removing emissions where possible. And we also have the USDA New Agriculture Innovation Agenda, which was launched in February. That's mostly domestic, focusing on increasing agricultural production 40% while decreasing environmental footprint 50% by 2050. So this kind of work fits within the broader goals that USDA has. And what we've been asking ourselves is what capacities are needed to really develop and scale innovations globally that would help to achieve these types of goals with our partner countries, and how do we target and prioritize investment? So that's the background from our teams. We've specifically this year decided to focus our collaboration around food loss and waste, looking at what is needed to support greater investments in food loss and waste internationally, and how can food loss be incorporated into resilient agriculture and sustainable landscape programs. So we've been investigating this on both sides, and to do that, we've put out two small innovative research studies that are going for 6 months this year. We've really challenged the teams that we're working with a short timeline, but we appreciate everything that they're doing to help push this conversation forward. From the University of Arizona, Dr. Gagi Davidowitz and his team, who I think Gagi might be on today, but he's not presenting today, but his team is looking at how to use insects as a way to more efficiently address food loss and waste, and then have more food and feed options in our ag systems. And that work will be presented separately. And then today, Agribusiness Associates, represented by Gurbinder Gill and Rashmi Eka, will be talking about their work to assess food loss and waste business opportunities and how to integrate it into value chain selection. So that's what our collaboration has been focused on this year, and this webinar is kind of a kickoff for the work that Agribusiness Associates is doing in order to help them get some inputs that will feed into the research that's being conducted. So that's what our objectives are today. Identify individuals and offices interested in deepening international food loss and waste activities. So we're looking to see which of our colleagues are really interested in digging into this more with us. discuss how food loss and waste criteria can be incorporated into value chain selection. We want to share our experiences and challenges today and capture some innovative ways that we might be able to integrate food loss and waste into program design, and really want to get a sense of what analyses, tools, and knowledge products are needed to help us move forward. So that's our goals today and in the work that ABA is doing over the next couple of months. So with that, we have a poll for everybody.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. I'm going to try to take back control of the screen.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rashmi.
And I will launch a poll.
Great.
Okay, just give me 1 second, folks, for
Okay.
technical issues.
No, I know, and I was controlling your screen. Sorry. Thanks.
Okay, because I logged in from my phone as well, somehow it won't let me do the poll right now.
That's okay.
Okay, I think
we can do that poll anytime.
Yeah, the poll has become inactive because of multiple logins.
Okay.
Maybe we can just do it with a show of hands for those who are on video.
Or you can raise your hand in the virtual space too. I'll look at that.
Right. So the first question was, how familiar are you with food loss and waste concepts? And if you can give us an expression to show your familiarity level, that would be great. Awesome. This is more fun. And then the second question was, how often do you see opportunities to integrate food loss and waste into your work?
Yeah, I'll have to be like a level.
You're like, come see, come saw, I don't know. Okay, very helpful. Thank you. And we'll go back into screen share now.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we asked that because I know a lot of us are interested in food loss and waste, but sometimes struggle to get it incorporated in our programs. I've had that challenge myself, so I'm really excited to be learning today as well. And my next slide is just introducing the speakers, and you all have their bios in the invitation that was sent out. But just as a reminder, we're first going to hear from Noel Gerwick, team lead for Sustainable Landscapes, team at the Office of Global Climate Change, who works a lot on addressing land-based greenhouse gas emissions. Then we'll hear from Gurbinder Gill, who is the Executive Director of Agribusiness Associates, an international development consulting firm, and leads food loss, applied research, project design, and implementation. And then Rashmi, who's wearing all the hats today. She will also be presenting her work as an agriculture development and food loss expert at Agribusiness Associates. And she's been associated with 2 USAID Feed the Future Innovation Lab projects on horticulture, specifically in Rwanda and Burkina Faso. So she's drawing from that experience as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Noel. Thanks.
Thank you, Caitlin. I'm trying to give Noel control of the laptop. And Noel, you should be able to control the screen now. Noel, you may still be on mute.
Okay, thanks. When I was in the slide, I couldn't.
No, we couldn't hear you, so I avoided that. But
Yeah,
we can hear you now.
I couldn't find the button with the info.
It's hard when you have the big screen. Okay, well, I'll open up the PowerPoint again and we take it from the top here. And I will give you control of the remote now. Here you go.
Okay. Thanks, Rashmi. Sorry about the hiccup and good morning, everybody. For those of you who aren't familiar with our Sustainable Landscapes program at USAID, we work with a high-level goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the land and storing carbon in landscapes at national scales. And much of the time we work in places you might expect, like in this Amazonian in Guatemala and Biosphere Reserve, to protect the forests, to keep the carbon in the trees and not have it go up into the atmosphere. We work in places, if I can get the screen to move forward, which it's not.
There you go.
There we go. Like these peatlands in Indonesia, lots of carbon in the soil. Peatlands, really rich, dark, thick, peaty soils. If you've never had a chance to walk in a peatland, I recommend you try to find a chance sometime. If you drain the peatlands, the carbon in the soil is decomposed and it goes up into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, as methane. We work in places like this forest in Malaysia, where there's a oil palm plantation that is encroaching on the forest, and work to decrease the pressure that the oil palm plantations put on the forest and that drives land use change. So this is one of a number of ways that we work on agriculture in our Sustainable Landscapes program. And if you look at the next slide, which this, I'm sorry, normally this isn't a problem. This is from our Climate Links website. And this particular page shows low emissions opportunities in agriculture. There's lots of different ways that we can address greenhouse gas emissions from land in agriculture. If you look at those 4 boxes together, the upper right one showing some of the rice field, high greenhouse gas emissions from rice, lots of opportunities to reduce emissions from rice. If you look at the box below it, it focuses on food loss and waste and reducing emissions from food loss and waste. We've only got 4 boxes to work with here, and we chose to use one of them to highlight our work on food loss and waste for a reason. And the reason is that the opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by reducing food loss and waste is really high. It's a really important lever in our work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the land sector globally. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why. Sorry, more screen issues. This slide, I'm trying to get it to stay on, is from Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown works way beyond the land sector. We work all across the economy, estimating the emission reductions that we could achieve with different approaches between now and the year 2050. And if you look at those 2 lines outlined with the blue box there, one is plant-based diets, one is reduced food loss and waste. And if you just glance at the numbers next to those strategic approaches compared to all the others, it highlights very quickly what a large opportunity Project Drawdown sees in food loss and waste as an approach to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the land or from a number of other parts of the economy as well. Yeah, this is the screen. It's really jumping all over the place. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do about this.
There's a bit of a lag time, Noel, so if you just let the screen catch up to you, that may be helpful.
What's that, Roger?
Once you click next, it takes a while for the screen to actually do it. So just give it a little bit of time and it will happen. Yeah.
Okay, and I think I'm just going to stop with the slides altogether and I'm just going to talk because otherwise it's just going to take too long. So the slide that happens to be up now shows 2 different reports. One is from the Food and Agriculture Organization, one is from the World Resources Institute. And I put these in just to make the point that there are many think tanks out there that are working on climate change and land, and just about all of them have some major initiative on reducing food loss and waste for the reasons I've explained already. One of the reasons that there are so many opportunities in food loss and waste, and one of the reasons it's a little bit tricky to figure out exactly how to address, is that it's a cumulative set of emissions and a cumulative set of opportunities all along the value chain, starting at the field, going through harvest, through processing, through transport, through retail, and at every step of the way, we lose or waste some food. There are emissions associated with that, and of course, the further down the chain you get, your cumulative emissions include all of the ones from before. So I'm not even touching my screen, and the computer just has a mind of its own. So you can just ignore your screen. I don't know what's going on. I'm so sorry. We have worked on food loss and waste before. We worked with the CGIAR's Climate Change, Ag, and Food Security Program and the Bureau for Food Security to look at the estimated greenhouse gas emission reductions we achieved through 30 different BFS programs. We've also worked with the CGIAR to fund graduate students from our partner countries to estimate the carbon reductions that could be achieved from different value chains. So we're really excited now to be working with Agribusiness Associates and with our colleagues at FAS and USDA, taking an additional run at this within USAID, also outside of USAID, to figure out if you were going to work on value chains from a food loss and waste perspective, where should you go and how should you go about doing that? We're interested today in starting to build a broader conversation within USAID and between USDA and USAID around this question, and also to start getting some input for our colleagues at Agribusiness Associates on which aspects of this tool development are going to be most useful to you. So I really apologize for all of the slide glitches. I don't know what's going on. And
no, would you like me to help you get to the next slide?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. We'll go over to Gil next from Agribusiness, and Gil, I'll keep control of the slides because that was hard, and so you can just tell me next slide when you're ready. Over to you, Gil. And make sure to unmute yourself because you're probably on mute. Gil?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Morning. Morning, everyone. This is Gurvinder Gill from Agribusiness Associates. We are based in Davis, California, and happy to work with the team over here on the subject which just Noel has highlighted. Rashmi, next slide, please. Rashmi, next slide.
There we go.
So basically, it's a group of agribusiness professionals which we work in the private sector and the development sector, and now try to focus on three major things. One is strategic consulting, the management consulting, and industry insights. So what we have seen over a period of time, getting into all three different aspects, it brings out sometimes a very good deliverable for the understanding of the client. And that's what we focus on. And next, please. Next slide. And over the last couple of years, I've just tried to list a couple of people we had worked with Horticulture Innovation Lab, which was funded by USAID. We worked in Rwanda and Burkina Faso with World Bank. We worked in Nigeria, Rwanda, and India. World Wildlife Fund, we are working in Kaza region, Cameroon, and Tanzania. And for Windrock in Bangladesh and Nepal. And also we work with Summit in Nepal and a couple of private companies. So we work both on the development side, and on the private sector, we are more on business acquisition analysis, analyticals. So pretty much the team has worked in the recent years across the geography. So this is, I'll keep brief, and we will definitely send out the detailed note. Rashmi, over to you for giving a highlight of the work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Gil. And this slide just shows some photos from our work in Rwanda, where we work to reduce food loss in horticulture with a focus on tomatoes, green bananas, orange flesh sweet potatoes, and peppers. So I'll start the main part of my presentation. So good morning, everyone, again, and I'm Rashmi. These are the objectives of this project. So this project started in June, and it's short term. We'll finish in September. And our goal is to develop information products which will assist development stakeholders in pushing more investment into FLW programming. So part of our first objective is to create a tool which will help users prioritize value chains using FLW criteria. This will include guidance on key concepts and indicators and how to think about these during a value chain selection exercise. So a lot of our focus of the discussion will feed into this, but also the other objectives that we have, which include developing case studies that will help characterize and explore some key factors, as well as develop illustrative business models, which will really give some color on how to attract private sector, for promising interventions. Noel gave a lot of this information today, but I really want to quickly emphasize that SDG 12.3 sets out that we have to focus on having halving the per capita global food loss and waste by half by 2030. So the big FAO report from 2011 told us that the estimates were about 30% for food lost and wasted. And then there was an update to this number in 2019, where we know that 14% is being lost. The waste numbers are not out yet. So where is food being lost? Really in a lot of big geographies, but the bottom three are Central and Southern Asia, North America and Europe, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And where is food, which foods are being lost? So it might be surprising to see roots and tubers at the bottom, but that's mostly driven by cassava and potato loss, and fruits and vegetables because they're highly perishable and also lack adequate post-harvest management systems. The global greenhouse emissions associated with food loss and waste are quite high. And again, Noel talked about this, but quickly to highlight, cereals and roots and tubers emerge as significant problems for the environment with major impacts on carbon, blue water, and arable land. Rice also represents a significant share of these impacts, given the high carbon intensity of rice production methods, and rice paddies are major emitters of methane. Fruits and vegetables have a high water footprint, and meat has a high land footprint because of production. So on this slide, we're really getting into the first objective of our project, which is how to select value chains using a food loss and waste criteria. So first, I want to just share some of the main criteria that development practitioners already use for value chain selection. And the first four over here are from the value chain approach from the Market Links website, which a lot of people will be familiar with. And then I added the bottom to resilience and implementation feasibility in from the LEO project done by ACD Avoca. So folks who work in value chain development will be familiar with this, but really quickly, the main things we look at is competitiveness. So is this crop in this geography going to be a competitive sale, and is there market demand for it? The next is impact potential. So would this crop help people mostly rise out of poverty? Cross-cutting issues. We know that gender, nutrition, youth are some of the ones that have really been integrated really well now. I think this is where food loss and waste and environmental considerations should also come in. Industry leadership. This is where we have lead firms which help, or organizations which would help organize the value chain and, consolidate the demand. Resilience is really important concept, and value chains should enable the target population to adapt to the shocks and stresses from policy, market, as well as the natural environment. And lastly, implementation feasibility. On the right side, I have a photo from a project I did with CRS in Ethiopia. And during the value chain selection exercise, we actually went and spoke with the farmers to ask them what they were hearing from the market and what they would like to produce. So that's a really important consideration as well. So when we try to select value chains, looking at them from a food loss and waste perspective, the main two indicators for us are food loss and food waste. So a lot of times these two terms are used interchangeably, but for our purposes and also the way industry is really trying for this to be, is that food loss is understood as what is lost along the way from the farm till market. So, and here we're only really concerned about the edible parts of the food. So, for example, for corn, we're not, we would not be looking at husk or leaves or any of that, just the edible kernels, and what is lost from there would be the food loss. And then the second is food waste. So waste would be whatever is thrown away. And this waste normally happens in the form of trash at the retail point or at the home restaurant consumption level. Sometimes this waste can, however, also happen because of the market demand and the harvest schedule was not in sync, like has happened during COVID when, growers had crop but could not get it to market, and so it had to be thrown away. So where in the chain does most of the food loss and waste occur? It's commonly understood that loss happens mostly close to farm and waste happens closer to the ultimate consumer. This is not always true. So for example, fruits and vegetables are lost. A lot of it does happen in the middle of the chain as the produce is moving from the farm to the market, and if the journey is long, and especially if the crop changes hands several times. So again, this really depends on crop and geography. And similarly with, where in the chain does a negative climate impacts happen. So again, they will tend to be in sync with where the food loss and waste happens. But, sometimes there is a big climate impact. So for example, there may be deforestation, but that's not where the food loss is happening. So they're not always in sync. So food loss and waste related concepts and indicators. Here are some of them. So in literature, researchers have been expressing the importance of the loss, the food loss and waste, and the subsequent benefits of reducing this by expressing them in environmental terms. So this is really helpful because it just helps us understand the extent of the loss, as well as helps align our interests and stakeholders. You'll notice that here, the carbon footprint, water footprint, land footprint, these are all really indicators that are based on converting the weight of the food that is lost and using a factor to convert it over to these indicators. So we start with the indicators in the previous slide, and then we convert it to get these. And apart from the environmental ones, nutritional content and financial implication is also very important. We often calculate, so if we had 10% of tomatoes lost at a particular stage, how much of an economic loss that is. And last, I want to present a few more criteria for FLW prioritization. This will be, mostly relating to what your program objectives are. So for example, if your main goal is to work in stopping deforestation and looking at food loss and waste, you may choose to work in palm oil. So for example, in Cameroon, you would look at the chain and you would find out that a lot of the loss is happening at the artisanal miller level. And so that information would drive your work in reducing deforestation by working in reducing the food loss in the value chain, even though that part is very far removed from where the deforestation is actually happening. Similarly, if you're concerned with water quality, soil quality, biodiversity, wildlife conservation, including human-wildlife conflict, all of these program objectives can be met using some food loss and waste concepts in our work. And then when choosing value chains according to this particular lens, it's really important to look at where the investment opportunities lie. So we really need to look at crops where we have solutions, technologies, and management practices that can lower the loss and lower the carbon, land, and water footprint. And if these don't exist, this might be a really hard sell. So with this, I hope I've given you enough food for thought on how we can integrate food loss and waste into value chain selection. And I'll hand it over to Caitlin to discuss the breakout questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Rashmi, for that great presentation. So we are moving into the section where we're going to go into breakout groups.
Hey,
Rashmi,
Caitlin, just really quick, I'll stop my screen share if that's okay, so I can start organizing the breakout. So if you just want to talk through that without the slides, is that okay?
Yeah, it's more than.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And I think Paige might have some information on the breakout groups. So everybody should have the invitation that has a breakout question. So I don't have a slide right now, but that's okay. I'll just let you know what our goals are. So we're going to break out for about 30 minutes into a couple different groups of mixes of our institutions and the types of focus areas that we work on, or at least we're going to try based on who's on the call to mix that up appropriately. We'll give it our best shot. And what we have is a set of 5 questions that we had sent out. And what we're really looking to do is have a conversation, have a space where we can learn from each other, talk, and we're going to actually have some follow-up webinars over the next couple of months. So we hope to, get to know each other and be able to build off each other's experiences. And then also, as Rashmi said, the questions are going to feed directly into what ABA is doing. They want to be doing research and providing outputs that are directly usable. So I think saying what you need and where you're coming from will be really helpful in the breakout groups. So the questions that we had sent out, every breakout group is going to be addressing question number 1, which is, what types of food loss and waste interventions are you aware of, and what practices seem most promising for your program? And then different breakout groups will be assigned the following questions, but if your group really wants to go in a different direction, we are more than happy to do that. This is just to spread it out a little. Second question is, what would motivate you to incorporate food loss and waste reductions into your programs? Rashmi just touched on that, looking at food security or carbon footprint, etc. And question number 3, is food loss and waste included in program design stage at this time? Looking at market system level or crop selection, for example. What challenges are there in incorporating food loss and waste early into the projects that we lead? Question number 4, would it be feasible to integrate food loss and waste throughout your initiatives and programs? Do you have examples on how you already do this? And the last question is, what information on food loss and waste would be useful to you? If you had information on food loss and waste by crop, what would you do with it? So no need to remember those. They're in the invite. Your facilitators will also guide you through. Each breakout group will have a facilitator and a note taker to help guide you. But I just wanted to share all the questions with everyone. in case there's one that really jumps out to you that you want to react. So with that, we're going to break out for, I think it's actually about 25 minutes at this point, but or we can still do 30. We'll just cut out some of the 5 minutes of the Q&A at the end, which I think is fine. So break out for 30 minutes, and then we will come back, and it'll all happen automatically. Magic, Zoom magic. So, Rashmi, are you good to go?
Oh, just a little bit, Caitlin. So we have 27 people on the call right now. So I was thinking we'll go ahead with 3 breakout rooms. How does that sound?
Yep, thanks.
Because we don't have enough to distribute into 4.
Yeah, I think
okay, so. I will open the rooms and try to distribute people.
Okay.
Starting now. Okay.
And the purpose of this particular break before we get into our question is, anything more you want to comprehend or share from what we have just shared with you in the last 30 minutes? Any comments, guidance?
Gil, I just wanted to jump in. Is Paige here? Yes, Paige is here. Yes. And Paige, you want to throw up can you share a screen to start taking notes? And also record. Great.
I'm, for whatever reason, the only option I'm missing to share my screen is the PowerPoint option.
Oh yeah, throw up a word or just, anything really.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'll unmute everybody so, we can have a free-flowing discussion. Over to y'all. I'll be back.
It's like they're not the ones that are going to be the most useful to us. We'll find some other questions and some other points of departure for the discussion. Okay, so.
Hi, Noel. Just Rashmi here. I just popped in. I unmuted everybody so we can have a fluent discussion, and just to check in to see if Anna was able to take notes, if she's able to share her screen and take notes.
Yes, I am able to share my screen, but Noel prefers to see everybody's faces, so I'll be taking notes privately. I just put the questions up for group 2 on the chat box, so everybody should be able to see them on the chat box now.
Excellent, and if you can also record the session on your computer, that would be great. Thank you.
All right.
Please go ahead. I'll hop over to room 3 now.
But less so on food loss and waste. So I guess I'm here more to learn than anything else.
Great, thanks Peter for joining. Diane. I don't know, Diane, if you can hear me. All right, we'll skip. We'll go to LK.
Yes, this is Lisa Kitanoya.
Oh, great.
You might have seen my name on some of the reading materials that have been flying around. I've been working on food loss and food loss reduction for the last 40 years. So I'm working now with the Post-Harvest Education Foundation. We're trying to provide training to young people so that they can assess losses in their countries and then do some kinds of capacity building locally. And for this project, I'm working with ABA as a consultant.
So great. Thanks, Lisa. And Diane, are you back? I have audio issues. All right, if she can join. Diane is in USDA's global programs as well. She'll give more information if she joins. And Reginald, I think is last. Reginald, are you?
Hello, good morning. Do you hear me?
Yep, that's great.
I'm sorry I joined the webinar very late. I had some technical issues this morning. But my name is Reginald Toussaint and I'm working in Haiti from USAID Haiti. So I am a project manager for various agricultural projects. So we don't have any project working specifically on food waste, food loss, food waste, but all of our projects, when we support ag productivity, so the main challenges that the farmers that are facing is loss because they don't really have a market to sell the product. So one of the things that we are doing is trying to connect farmers to the market, and we think that is a good way to minimizing food loss. Over.
That's great. Thanks, Reginald. And Diane, did I hear you? Okay. All right, I gave it 3. Okay, great. So what we're going to do now, we have about 23 minutes or so to connect with each other and chat. The first thing I just wanted to ask is just a broad question, kind of before we jump into the discussion questions, specifically, if anybody has any feedback or thoughts on the food loss and waste concepts or indicators that were presented, anything you felt was missed, just some reactions to what was presented, if there's any, before we go into further discussion. And we have Rashmi, I just saw, so that's great. If you have any questions for her. Does anybody have any initial questions based on the presentations? Okay, great. So then let's jump into these discussion questions. So the first one is, what types of food loss and waste interventions are you aware of, and ones that could relate to your program, and maybe what practices that you've seen that you think are promising? So does anybody want to jump in with things that they've seen or heard about that they're curious about or think might work in their programs? Yeah, Kirsten, let me go for it. Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
There's a couple of examples that I've seen in West Africa that I think have a lot of legs for scaling up. One is in Benin, the Songhai Center uses biogas, digestive biogas for fuel. And they've been doing that for years. And they're able to electrify a farm and then also a like refrigeration units, and do a lot of like a processing of really nice fine cheeses and meats, and have a really nice boutique that goes along with the farm system. So it's a very nice, elegant model of integrative regenerative agriculture, but with this kind of marketing angle that also deals with the fuel aspect as well. Another example that we funded while I was at the World Bank was in Nigeria, where they were using cassava waste, the peels from cassava, to feed and fatten goats. They were able to experiment with some really low-tech drying methods, just some platforms with some black tarpaulin to dry the cassava waste and then fatten goats so they could get them to market much more quickly. It was a good nutritive way to process feed, and that has a nice ancillary benefit that can has another market application. So those are the two examples that I thought were great and
maybe some perspectives to reflect on maybe in other countries. But what I just mentioned was specifically what we see here, and not just with USAID, it's also with some other activities we see through, say, for instance, the Ministry of Agriculture here. There's a World Bank program that they implement, and they similarly sort of witness a lot of losses coming from poor or non-existent post-harvest handling. So that's a cross-cutting issue, really. And if folks can now, I can sort of provide other perspectives maybe from other countries, but that was more in reference to Liberia context. Over.
Okay, thanks. Erin or Tanvi, do either of you want to share any thoughts or reflections on either the general question number 1 in the chat box or question number 3? Question 3 is whether food loss and waste is included in at the project design stage. So, for example, at the market system level, selecting which crops to work on, that kind of thing. Muffet, I think, spoke to some of that, talking about simply the trying to provide support for better practices to avoid food loss on the field.
What Muffet was talking about, it was interesting to hear and bring the perspective that you mentioned that
We lost you. Can anybody hear?
I can hear. This is Erin.
Yeah, but whoever was talking,
I mean, I can't hear anyone, though. I can hear.
I think it was Anna. I think Anna cut out.
Yeah. Somebody else wants to pitch in.
Erin, Tanvi, either of you want to offer any reflections on some of these questions, or what you heard this morning from earlier from Caitlin or me or Rashmi? How it looks through your particular lens where you work?
Sure. This is Erin McGuire. I used to work with Rashmi at the Horticulture Innovation Lab. I was the associate director there, so we did projects.
I am back. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
You're here. Hello?
I'll go ahead. This is Erin and give
please continue.
my thoughts on this. So I really appreciate this discussion, and we come at it from at the Horticulture Innovation Lab, we approached a lot of the work we did because we focus on fruits and vegetables from a food loss and waste perspective often, because that's such an issue with fruits and vegetables. And from our perspective, fruits and vegetables are an amazing intervention point around nutrition, income, and I also think that they're a really important place. Food loss and waste is a really important place to start in terms of climate change and the environment. And so when I was thinking about question 3, is food loss and waste included in project design stage, e.g. market system level, crop selection, etc.? I think that there's a lot of low hanging fruit in terms of income if you are able to recapture the food loss and waste, particularly of, let's say, horticulture crops. And if you're thinking about conservation and being able to mitigate wildlife habitat loss or just preserve natural spaces, being able to increase a community's income is obviously a pretty important strategy. And if you look throughout any sort of agriculture system, there is often a lot of food loss and waste that is occurring. So if you're able to, as I said, recapture those losses and do income generation, I think that could help your overall goal, even if it's an indirect outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does. You know, part of what I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you, Erin, and I appreciated your comments just now, and also Moffat, yours. When we did this work with CCAFs and the FAO and the Bureau for Food Security several years ago, as I said, they looked at, I think, almost 30 different USAID projects, which is a lot. You know, and each of these projects had several value chains involved. One of the analyses that they did at the end was to look by value chain, you know, aggregating across these projects where food loss and waste reduction had meaningful climate change benefits. You know, and it's not really surprising what they come up with, that the big wins are in something like dairy. Even if they're not reducing food loss and waste from dairy that much, the emissions from dairy are so big that that a small reduction makes a big difference. Whereas if you're looking at something like fruits or vegetables, the emissions associated with those crops just aren't that high in the first place. So even if you get big wins in food loss and waste and maybe big wins for nutrition, your big wins from a climate change perspective are not so impressive. But I'm wondering whether anybody has taken sort of a more systems level take on this, whether, you know, what happens if you start incorporating strategies to reduce food loss and waste from one value chain. Are the off-takers working on multiple value chains at once, and do they care about this? And so maybe even if you start at a place that seems to have less climate benefit, in the long run you are creating a leverage point, something like that. I don't know, I haven't seen that question asked, but I'm certainly, you know, I have some superficial to maybe a little bit deeper than superficial familiarity with this literature, but I certainly know I don't have a comprehensive view of it. I imagine somebody might have asked that question before. Tommy, can you chime in on this?
Yes.
Give us a little idea of what your role is and what brought you to this workshop today, and what your thoughts are on how these questions of food loss and waste might impact the kinds of projects, programs with which you have some familiarity.
Yeah, so I'm new to USAID, which is why I've been largely silent, but I'm coming, thank you. So I have worked in gender in the past, and so working specifically on food loss and waste is very new to me, but I think it's something that my bureau is interested in integrating. So I'm coming at this as from an outsider's perspective, so maybe that would be useful for you to see how we've been thinking about some things. But I've largely worked on women's economic empowerment interventions, and I think the challenge is at the program design stage, we consider a lot of trade-offs, and I think that food loss and waste ends up becoming one of those trade-offs, right? So when we're thinking about how do we design a program that would best improve women's access to finance or economic empowerment and things like that, the focus ends up being on those very particular skills, like business training skills and accounting skills and things like that. And it doesn't quite get into the technical skills, even though a lot of the beneficiaries that we work with are people who are agribusiness owners or small scale farmers. And so I can see that there is a very easy entryway in incorporating food loss as a method to increase yields, make them more efficient, but I just don't think that that's part of the conversation, and especially a lot of the spaces that work strictly on economic empowerment, and I think that's a large gap. And I also think that it's not something that's discussed, and I think that's information that I think should be incorporated into the field a little bit more.
I'm really glad you decided to join us today. I think that gender and women's empowerment lens could be a great part of this conversation. It kind of goes to what I was saying at the beginning. Yes, we have some specific questions we're hoping to address here today, but we're also simply trying to kind of probe and see how much interest there is in this topic of conversation as a more ongoing thread of dialogue that can inform our programming and our collaborations within the agency. So I'm really glad you joined us. And I could imagine all kinds of questions that we could ask from a gender and women's empowerment lens in the food loss and waste arena. Rashmi.
Hi, Tony. I'd just like to respond a little bit about gender and food loss and waste. So in our work in Rwanda, it was a 3-year project, so we've really had time, and we really, in several organizations and agencies and ministries, and we really had time to think about this. And we realized that, women do, first of all, because we worked in fruits and vegetable, and those are sort of seen as women's crops. So women were really involved in fruit and vegetable growing, and they're really involved in any of the processing, right? And so the time labor as well, the physical labor is really theirs in this chain. And so, and the loss is also really very keenly felt by them because of their own nutrition, especially maternal nutrition, as well as, child nutrition. Because again, we're working on trying to have more nutrition, fruits and vegetables in the diet. We realized that processing can be a time suck as well as a time saver. So if I dry amaranthus, this season, I spend more time doing this now, but next season I'll benefit from it and be able to have the nutritional needs. So we really did try to think a little bit about where just gender and food loss and waste intersect, and a lot of that was in processing. Also in the outside of the home, in the formal sector, in processing facilities, it's mostly women who work as the packers because they're seen to have nimble hands, so they do a lot of the packing. Women also tend to do most of the harvesting, again, because of the idea of, tender hands to do the picking. So there's just some quick thoughts on where gender and food loss and waste intersect, and, how we really try to work with women farmers as well as up the chain on capacity building around how to, reduce food loss and waste for themselves, their families, and their communities.
Yeah,
I want to go back to Bird.
Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead, Tavi.
I was just responding to that comment. I was just thinking about some programs that really have been focusing on women's access to market knowledge and understanding what crops are competitive and things like that. And I guess I hadn't quite made the connection between food loss and food waste until the presentation this morning, and so that's a useful perspective to have.
So I'm curious to go back to Bird at this point. You were talking about the analyses that Green Invest Asia has done on commodity supply chains in Southeast Asia. How much does do Tanvi's comments resonate? Are these the kinds of things working with, I think, are a little bit different than maybe some of the places Rashmi was talking about a minute ago. How much does this gender lens resonate with the Green Invest Asia work, and with maybe the related observations you've made around these commodity supply chains that are driving deforestation? And
we actually have been trying very hard on gender lens in our first 2 years, and right now we just about to finish year 3, and we feel like when our regional level project focus on mid-sized business, it's just really hard to focus on gender lens involved, because we feel like gender lens work with small scale business, and for large scale business that just focus on cost effective. So to be honest,
So it's hard because the businesses aren't interested. Like they just don't want to engage on this question. You might be able to figure something out about whether women hold positions of influence in these businesses, but they're not interested in talking to you about it, and it's not going to help their business to have the conversation. So it's hard to know where to go with the is that am I hearing
yeah,
that right?
we have been trying a lot. We don't see it a strong, good entry point. There are some impact investor that you can get a bit higher score if your business involve gender, but for more mid-sized business in Southeast Asia that don't see gender is an issue. For example, in Vietnam, is a lot of women who play big role in business already, like a coffee dealer or timber, wood processing, is a lot of women involved already.
Okay. Anna, do you?
I wanted to comment.
Anna's not that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to comment that as relates maybe to engaging with business, and it's a little bit to question 4, the idea that businesses and people who are involved, say, in processing or storage or other kind of value addition kinds of work, appropriate technology or innovations that are going to be closer to the production sites and easily accessible to growers, I feel like will be a major way to really embed this thinking, because if we sort of start programs or emphasize this concept with food loss and food loss and waste, as we think about our value chains, I feel like having that idea of appropriate technology and innovations to help with reduction will, one, help to make the business case for maybe larger. I think as Bird was mentioning, maybe some of the businesses may view these things as sort of like what's the bottom line, and if there's going to be ways to sort of improve the efficiency or effectiveness of yield output, I think it's going to be quite important to look at innovations or appropriate technologies that are accessible to people at the grassroots level. So anyway, just wanted to put that through as a sort of a business relevant idea. Over.
So we've had a latecomer join us. I'm guessing Umo just had a conflict earlier, but wanted to, Umo, welcome. We've only got about 3 minutes left in the breakout, according to the little note that Rashmi just sent around. But do you want to just take two of those 3 or so minutes and introduce yourself, and any thoughts you have about where you've encountered this question of food loss and waste in the programs that you've managed or observed?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm the lead for the design of our next weather and climate information services activity, and unfortunately this webinar conflicted with a team discussion we are having on the design of this activity, and I'm most particularly concerned about post-harvest loss, as I also manage our fisheries portfolio in addition to being the climate integration lead. And also we're moving now from investing a lot in production to investing a lot in post-harvest in the farming sector. So these are all intertwined considerations that are of high interest to me and to our economic growth team. But hopefully I should be able to watch the recording. Thank you.
Okay. And where are you based?
Oh, thank you. I'm based in the USAID mission in Senegal.
Okay. Well, this is certainly going to be an ongoing discussion, so we'll have other chances for you to weigh in or learn. Anna, you've been taking notes, which I really appreciate. I think we all really appreciate. I guess we're going to be asked to summarize in some way or another. Do you feel like you've got the points that we need, or do you have clarification questions for anybody, or points that you think we ought to return to from what you've gleaned so far?
No, I think we have the point's pretty much clarified. I think there's some questions that are still pending, but I don't think we have the time to go back to Mofat's first questions, and it's the challenges that present in recording or monitoring food loss and waste. I don't think we talked about that. So if anybody wants to take a shot at that, perhaps we can close.
Take a shot at questions about monitoring and recording how much food is lost and wasted. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that was Mofat's initial comments, right?
Robert, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, I think I started off, yes, mentioning that, yes, there's a lot of the characterization of what is lost or what is wasted is often, there's not very good, we don't have very good information here, generally speaking, and I think in many countries. So I think a quantification of that, especially if we can, I don't know whether we can graphically or photographically represent, I think that will be part of what will be needed to really help people see.
Rashmi, do people have to bring themselves into this, or does it happen automatically?
It'll do both.
Okay. I got ahead of myself and I hit leave, and then I was like, oh no, no one's come with me.
We're with you.
Okay.
But otherwise, like, you can say go back to the main room, or you can just like let it time out and the people will come accordingly once it times out. Yeah.
The whole new world of Zoom. Here we go.
Caitlin, if you want, you can continue moderating for our big session here and the report out.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just checking in on time. And we just did 3 groups, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We did 3 groups.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, I think we can take about 3-4 minutes each. The facilitators from the groups can report back on key things that came up in their discussions, aha moments, or just points to highlight and share with the group. And then we can end with about a 5-minute of Q&A after that. So I will kick us off. I've already apologized to my group in case I don't say their points correctly, but we had a really interesting conversation, a mix of people doing research, programs, and other types of broader activities at USAID that maybe aren't directly program related, but thinking about these investment opportunities. A couple of points that I noted that came up. One, just like a really big high level reminder for all of us that if we're trying to solve a problem, let's make sure that the problem really exists in the place that we're talking about it. I think we need different solutions depending on the supply chains and also at the scale. So that was one of the things that came up, and I think is a really good reminder to be specific in what we're trying to do. And that's definitely one of the goals of this ABA study, is to really highlight where we should be focusing our efforts and being really explicit about why we're doing certain things in certain places. We also talked a lot about the costs associated with waste. It's definitely a lost opportunity. So there's a loss of income, but we also highlighted that there's a cost to having food waste in terms of transportation. There was an example given from Mexico City where they have, I think it was 1 ton of food waste a day they're having to move around. So how can we, 1,000?
1,000.
I wrote 1K and I meant to say 1,000. 1,000 tons of food waste a day that they're having to bring out of the city. And then we also talked about not just it being a cost, but there being an opportunity. So things that we can recover or gain. We talked about drying down food waste and getting water back, being able to sell it as a different product. So you're still getting some income, or there's still some value in that, even if it wasn't the original intended value. Biogas and energy that can then feed back into, there was an example of feeding that back into refrigeration, which actually then creates more opportunities to address different types of food loss issues, and then turning it into feed and food. So those are some of the things that that came up in our group. I don't know if anybody else from our group wants, did I miss anything major item to add? Kirsten?
I think also just, underscoring Pete's point, and please never apologize for being an economist and looking at things from a cost-effective way. I mean, I think we definitely need more of that. So really identifying those kind of hot spots of where the bulk of the food waste is occurring, at which aspect of the value chain. I think that's really important, so you can figure out where to target your energies.
That's great. Thanks so much for emphasizing that. So then I will turn it over to group 1, which is Gil, to give a readout on some of the points in your group. Thanks.
Right. So Paige has taken all the notes, and I will appreciate if Paige, you can sum up, and then we can go over. Is it okay, Paige?
Paige, you're on mute.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I think I'm good now.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a lot of great participants in our group as well. A lot of things we discussed included, working off of or trying to develop an existing inventory of best practices. Jean was helpful in pointing out a few existing resources, but we also noted that this is an area where ABA, Gil and Rashmi's work and research associated with this program is looking to build upon. There was discussion as well about investments from the public and private sector, and for education and inputs for processing. Also looking for ways to diversify income streams in terms of including food loss and waste in the project design stage. We discussed having local stakeholder buy-in as being a crucial part in the early stage for knowing when and where and how the best ways to incorporate those sorts of considerations. We discussed also the trade and business perspective, considering the enabling environment for successful interventions in terms of like cold chain inventory or not inventory, infrastructure, pardon me, being established, or are there any type of sanitary or phytosanitary barriers? Considering that aspect, reducing economic loss was considered a high motivation for incorporating these food loss and waste programs, but overall, a lot of these components like food security and nutrition and economic value are all considered, high motivations for wanting to incorporate this into our work. And at the end, we were discussing the need for entrepreneurs and some innovative tools and technologies to really come into play, looking at ways to connect buyers with sellers to be as a tool for reducing food loss and waste. And also the need for cost-effective technologies that farmers have access to, knowledge of, and awareness of for those sorts of interventions. I think that covers it. Gil, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, we got it all. And anybody from the group also is welcome to speak in before we move over to the next group. Okay, I think Ketlin, back to you.
Okay, sounds good. I'm actually going to hand it off to Noel.
Hannah, do you want to? I'm happy to report out. Do you want to? You did all the work taking the notes. I feel like if you'd like to do it, it's yours.
No, that's okay. I will defer to you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think that what struck me about our conversation first is just that everybody had something to contribute. I really appreciated that. And we do these kinds of virtual or sometimes in-person gatherings around a topic. from time to time, and often there's variable participation. Everybody in our group had something to contribute and was genuinely interested in the topic. And that was quite gratifying for me anyway. It made me think that, okay, we're using people's time well. It was interesting for me to hear the diversity. Everybody around the table was coming at this from a somewhat different perspective. One person quite new to the agency, but is working from a gender and women's empowerment perspective. Bird from the Regional Development Mission in Asia was in the group. They're working primarily on commodity supply chains, so quite different from the kind of smallholder ag work that Moffett is engaged in Liberia, for example. Many of the themes that have already been presented came up in our group, the opportunities around achieving a variety of development objectives through this strategic approach, from improving food security to improving economic well-being. But also, I think, just thinking about these different geographies and different lenses, it was interesting to hear Bird comment that the women's empowerment lens that could be so powerful, maybe in a smallholder ag context, really wasn't something that their partners in Asia are particularly interested in. If you're talking to a processor of a commodity supply chain in Vietnam, they just might not be that, it's just not going to resonate that much. And it made me wonder whether there are some tools out there that kind of can help USAID officer or some other professional trying to understand how can I leverage this particular way of looking at the world, this food loss and waste reduction lens, and see how can I work on it in this place that would be useful. Moffett also brought up a point about measuring and tracking food loss and waste. What are the ways to do that that are tractable, that allow maybe any number of partners, people along the supply chain, to see both what are the consequences of these losses and what are the opportunities for doing better, and how are we doing at improving over time. Those are the points that stood out for me. I don't think there was any particular synthetic point that came. It was more the diversity of perspectives that related both to the different roles that people play in the agency, but also the different geographies in which they happen to be sitting, and what it means to be producing food and what it means to be losing food and wasting food along the value chain, and what opportunities there are to address that.
That's great. Thanks, Noel. Anybody else from your group want to add any points to that?
Yeah, please, if I left anything out.
I would just like to highlight the gender perspective. I think it's something that sometimes it's overlooked when they're designing or just adding food loss and waste. And it was very interesting how, from an outside perspective, it's something that it's not looked at the beginning, and how impactful it can be. So just that issue, the discussion was very interesting in our group.
That's great. Thanks, Hannah. And I also see a comment from Lisa in the chat. I don't know if you want to speak to your comment, or it's also there for everyone. Okay, I'll leave it in the chat, but she's talking about
let me see if I can unmute myself.
Oh yeah, you're there. Great, thanks, Lisa.
Oh,
it's a little bit. Unfortunately, I think it's breaking up a bit.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, I appreciate the comment. Thanks for putting it in the chat anyways. Sorry we couldn't hear you, but talking about bringing process opportunities closer to the farms and rural areas where there's a large loss of food happening in that area. And then one of the points that stuck out to me with Noel, or I guess it was Moffett's point on measuring and tracking. I just want to plug something for Jean that Jean's working on, which is USDA, because of this ag innovation agenda, is developing metrics to kind of track to track all sorts of goals that are in that agenda, and some of them being food loss and waste. So there will be a chapter on that, and USDA will have some information there that might be helpful specifically with that point. I don't know, Jean, if you want to add anything onto that.
The chapter's not quite done yet, but we've made great progress, but it will have more recommendations for the future. I just want to mention that the metrics that we're talking about are mostly for the United States. So that's the focus there. But I think it will spur more work, or help spur more work on food loss and waste here. It'll show the that USDA is behind food loss and waste, and it is a reduction. It's a priority for the secretary.
Thank you. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
that.
I just want to jump in on that quickly. For Moffitt, we've done some work in measuring food loss and waste in communities, and what we often do is these workshops where we bring in farmers, traders, wholesalers, and we share that information, and that's usually very jaw-dropping for them, because everybody just sees their own little waste, like, oh, I just 5 kg is nothing, my cow ate it, or something like that. But when they see the full impact of like, here's losing some at the farmer level, and then at the next aggregation point, and the next and the next, and all the way to the market, and then the whole thing is 30%, there's a lot of value in really having that aha moment and measuring it with the stakeholders. So we can follow up on that with you as well. Okay, Caitlin.
Yeah, we have just 5 minutes left, so I wanted to see if there's any burning questions, and then Rashmi will actually talk about next steps. But are there any other points for the next 2-3 minutes? Anything else that people want to ask, or just a comment? No, thanks.
So it's both a question and a comment. We have, I forget exactly how many learning events of some sort built into the scope of work for this project, which is on a pretty short timeline. We built those in because we wanted to use this partnership as a way for all of us to learn more about a topic that we thought was important and had the potential for multiple benefits around the agency. So if anybody involved today has particular ideas of how they would like us to use those opportunities, those learning events, some aspect of food loss and waste that you think it would be really helpful to incorporate into those, let us know. We have a lot of flexibility around that. It's not only supposed to be a report out of the specific work that Agribusiness Associates is doing. It's a way to use this scope of work and this partnership for all of us to learn more about this together.
That's great. Thanks, Noel. Yeah, I think Rashmi, I can't remember, you told me this morning, the dates we're shooting for. August and September, I think, for the next events.
Yeah, I won't share my screen, but I'll just quickly talk about next steps. So, we'll take today's feedback and integrate it into all of the final products. So we're putting together this tool on value chain selection through a FLW lens, and then 2 case studies and a couple illustrative business models. And so we'll do 2 more webinars, one in late August, which will focus on this, on the value chain selection tool, and then the second one will be in September, and that will give an overview of all of the outputs, information, products from our work. So we'll be sure to loop all of y'all in, and also please feel free to reach out if you'd like to have a more in-depth one-on-one interaction, and so we can capture all of your feedback. And so with that, I would like to say my thank you, and Caitlin, if you want to close out.
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate everyone joining. This has been really fun for us. We thank you for your time and your inputs. We're excited to be talking about this topic with everyone and digging into it for the next couple of months. We will share the slide deck with you so that you have the information that was presented. And also at the end of that, I've included everyone's emails today that was a speaker. We're all more than happy to connect as we move forward with this project. And then the hope is, we can take the business models and the research coming out that ABA is doing and Gagi at University of Arizona and help that inform some future work and programs. So
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate it. Hope you have a great afternoon and hopefully connect with you again soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Have a good afternoon. Bye.